Ambassador Alan Pierce sat motionless as the Zelgarian representative finished yet another thinly veiled threat. The large meeting room on the Galactic Council's central station was filled with representatives from over 50 alien species. The air smelled of strange scents, some sweet, some metallic, from the various atmospheres preferred by the different races. For 3 standard cycles, about 90 Earth days, humanity had endured the condescension and manipulative tactics of the Galactic Council's dominant species. What had begun as promising negotiations had turned into something else entirely. Alan looked down at his notes. The terms offered by the Council had grown worse with each meeting. They wanted access to Earth's water reserves, mining rights in the asteroid belt, and human soldiers for their ongoing border conflicts. In return, they offered protection and limited technology that Earth scientists had already developed independently. He glanced at the other members of the human delegation. Commander Susan Blackwell, their military attaché, gave him a subtle nod. They had discussed this possibility last night, the point at which further negotiation would be pointless. Alan took a deep breath and pressed the button that would activate his microphone. Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Council, he began, his voice steady despite the weight of what he was about to do. For 90 days we have negotiated in good faith. We have compromised on technology sharing, on territorial boundaries, and on resource allocation. Yet at every turn, our concessions have been met with additional demands. The Marixian delegate shifted uncomfortably. Its crystal-like body reflected the room's light in nervous patterns. Alan had learned this meant anxiety among their species. Therefore, by the authority given to me by the United Earth Government, I hereby announce humanity's withdrawal from these peace talks effective immediately. We will return to our solar system and maintain our independent status. The chamber erupted in noise as dozens of species reacted in shock. Some shouted, others clicked or hummed or flashed colors in their own languages. The translation devices struggled to keep up, creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. The Arconian High Chancellor, a 9-foot-tall reptilian being with shimmering scales, leaned forward. His massive hands gripped the edge of his desk. Ambassador Pierce, surely this is just a negotiating tactic. The Council has been more than generous. Generous? Susan Blackwell interrupted, breaking diplomatic protocol. Her dark eyes flashed, with controlled anger. You've demanded access to our quantum computer networks while refusing to share gravitational distortion technology. You've insisted on mining rights in our asteroid belt while denying us voting rights in the Council. This isn't generosity. It's colonialism with a fancy diplomatic mask. The word colonialism caused an immediate reaction. Several council members rose from their seats in protest. The Zelgarian representative, with his 6 upper limbs gesturing, in what humans had learned was extreme agitation, spoke next. This is outrageous. Humans have no concept of galactic politics. Your species barely left its home planet 2 centuries ago. Alan remained calm. And yet we developed faster-than-light travel independently. We terraformed Mars and Venus. We built the Europa underwater colonies and the Titan research stations. We accomplished in 200 years what took many of your species a millennium. As the human delegation stood to leave, Admiral Greg Hoffman of Earth Fleet Command sent a coded message from his wrist computer to the human ships waiting at the edge of Council space. Protocol homeward. Repeat, protocol homeward. The 5 human ships would now begin their journey back to the Sol system, traveling in tight military formation, rather than the loose diplomatic arrangement they had arrived in. No one noticed the small data crystal Alan left behind on the negotiation table, a complete record of the talks that would later prove crucial. The human delegation walked out of the chamber with straight backs and raised heads. They had discussed this moment extensively during their late-night strategy sessions. How the Council would react was uncertain, but continuing the charade of fair negotiations was no longer an option. In the corridor outside the chamber, Susan moved closer to Alan. "Do you think they'll follow us?" she asked quietly. Alan shook his head. "Not immediately. They'll debate, argue among themselves, try to determine if we're bluffing. And by then we'll be ready." Alan nodded. The Aegis protocol should be in its final implementation phase by now. If they decide to force the issue, they'll find we're not as defenseless as they believe. The Earth ships departed from the massive space station 12 hours later. The delay was strategic, just long enough to gather all their personnel and equipment without appearing to flee. Captain Lisa Winters stood on the bridge of the UES Resolute, the largest of the Earth vessels. Through the viewscreen, she watched the Council station shrink into the distance. "Course laid in for Seoul, Captain," reported her navigator, John Wells. "Estimated travel time at standard FTL, 8 days. "Thank you, Lieutenant." Lisa turned to Admiral Hoffman, who had just arrived on the bridge. "Sir, all personnel are accounted for. We're ready to depart." Greg nodded, his weathered face serious. At 62, he was one of the most experienced officers in Earth Fleet, having served during first contact with the Marixi 30 years earlier. "Proceed, Captain. Standard formation. I want weapons on standby, but not active. We're not looking for a fight. But we're ready for one," Lisa added. "Always." The Admiral looked at the tactical display showing the 5 Earthships arranging themselves in a protective formation. "The Council thinks we're primitive because we still use physical controls instead of neural interfaces. They think we're weak because we value individual freedom over collective efficiency." Lisa smiled tightly. "They'll learn." The ships accelerated and then vanished into FTL space, leaving behind a Galactic Council in disarray. Back in the Council chamber, an emergency session had been called. The Zelgarian representative was speaking, his translator conveying his angry words. "The humans are bluffing. Their ships are few, their weapons primitive. We should send a fleet to their home system now, while they're isolated, and show them the cost of disrespect." The Marixian delegate's crystalline form pulsed with concern. "I advise caution. We know too little about human military capabilities. Their diplomatic profile shows minimal information about their defense systems." "Precisely," countered the Zelgarian. "Because they have little to speak of." Only Science Director Liam Carter remained silent. As the only human who had stayed behind, his position with the Council's scientific division separate from the diplomatic corps, he knew what his fellow Council members did not. Humanity had prepared for this day for years. The humans were not running away. They were getting ready. As the Earth ships disappeared into the depths of space, they left behind more than just frustrated Council members. Hidden in specific locations, around the Council space station, tiny quantum-entangled devices activated, beginning to gather intelligence that would flow directly back to Earth, regardless of distance. The real game was just beginning. High Chancellor Vrex of the Arconian Empire paced the ornate chamber, where the Council's inner circle had gathered for an emergency meeting. His scaled tail dragged along the polished floor, leaving faint marks that the cleaning drones would remove later. 3 days, he growled. 3 days since the humans left, and still we debate what to do. The inner circle consisted of representatives from the 5 most powerful species in the Galactic Council. Besides Vrex, there was Delegate Sora of the Marixian Confederation, Ambassador Kelgan of the Zelgarian Dominion, Intelligence Director Nix of the Voidborn Collective, and Trade Minister Gallon of the Polarian Network. "How are we supposed to interpret this human withdrawal?" asked Zora, her crystalline form refracting light across the chamber in beautiful patterns. "Is this truly a diplomatic retreat, or should we prepare for military action?" Ambassador Kelgan scoffed, his 6 upper limbs moving in a gesture of dismissal. "The humans are bluffing. Their technological capabilities are impressive for such a young species, but they cannot hope to stand against the combined might of the Council. They'll return within a standard cycle, more amenable to our terms." "I'm not so certain," said a quiet voice from the doorway. They all turned to see Science Director Liam Carter enter the chamber. As the only human who had remained, his position, with the Council's scientific division separate from the diplomatic corps, he was now in an awkward position. "You asked for my presence, Chancellor?" Liam said, nodding respectfully to Vrex. "Yes. We need your insight. You are human, after all. What do you make of your species' sudden departure?" Liam walked calmly to the center of the room. At 45, he had spent nearly 10 years working with the Council, longer than any other human. His dark hair was graying at the temples, and his blue eyes held a wisdom that came from years of navigating the complex waters of interspecies politics. "You're underestimating my species," he said simply. "Explain," demanded Vrex, his yellow eyes narrowing. "Humans have a saying, never corner something that's more dangerous than you are." Liam clasped his hands behind his back. "We developed nuclear weapons before we achieved reliable spaceflight. We mastered genetic engineering while still burning fossil fuels. Our technological development has always been uneven, focused heavily on defensive and offensive capabilities." "Are you threatening the Council, Director Carter?" Kelgan asked, his upper appendages twitching in agitation. "Not at all. I'm merely providing context for what you perceive as a simple diplomatic withdrawal." Liam pressed a button on his wrist device and projected a hologram showing the departing human fleet. "Notice how they're traveling in formation. No civilian vessels, no separation of diplomatic from military ships. That's not just a retreat. It's a strategic realignment." The council members studied the hologram with growing concern. Intelligence. Director Nix of the shadowy Voidborn Collective spoke for the first time. Her species resembled floating dark clouds with glowing points of light within them, like personal nebulae. When she spoke, the lights pulsed in rhythm with her words. "The humans have been busy during negotiations. Our deep operatives report significant manufacturing activity in their home system. Orbital platforms, automated defense systems, and something they're calling the Aegis Protocol." A cold silence fell over the chamber. They knew, Vrex realized. They anticipated the failure of these talks from the beginning. "Worse," replied Nix. "I believe they planned for it." Trade Minister Galan, whose species communicated through changing skin patterns, flashed a series of concerned colors. "What exactly is this Aegis Protocol?" Liam shrugged. "That information is classified. Even I don't have access to it." "You expect us to believe that?" Kelgan said sharply. "You are human. Your loyalty would naturally lie with your own kind." "My loyalty is to science and to peaceful coexistence," Liam replied calmly. "That's why I remained when the delegation left. But I cannot share information I don't possess." Vrex moved to a large display panel on the wall and activated it with a touch of his clawed hand. A map of the galaxy appeared, with council space highlighted in blue and human territory in red. "Their territory is small," he noted. "Just one star system fully developed with outposts in a dozen others." "Size isn't everything," Liam said. "Earth unified only after centuries of warfare among its own nations. Those conflicts drove innovation in weapons technology that most peaceful species never develop." "You speak as if war is a positive force," Zora said, her crystal form dimming, slightly in what humans had learned was disapproval. "Not positive," Liam corrected. "Just formative. Humans dream of peace but prepare for war. It's deeply ingrained in our psychology." Nix floated closer to the galactic map. "Our agents report unusual energy readings from several points at the edge of human space. They appear to be some kind of monitoring stations, but the technology is unfamiliar." Kelgan made a dismissive gesture. "We should send a fleet to their home system, not to attack, just to show strength. The humans will quickly reconsider their position." "That would be a grave mistake," Liam said, his voice dropping. "Humans respond poorly to threats." "Is that another threat, Director?" Kelgan demanded. "No, it's an observation from Earth's history. When threatened, humans don't back down. They innovate. They find new ways to fight. They unite against common enemies." Vrex studied Liam carefully. "What would you suggest then?" "Send a diplomatic envoy. One ship, unarmed. Show respect, not force. Ask to restart negotiations on more equal terms." Before anyone could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber. "Chancellor, urgent news. Outpost Sigma-7 near the border of human space has gone silent." "What do you mean, gone silent?" Vrex demanded. "All communications ceased 3 hours ago. The last message reported unknown ships in the area." All eyes turned to Liam. "I know nothing about this. he said honestly. But if your outpost was inside territory claimed by Earth, it was in disputed space, Kelgan said quickly. The humans never formally established their claim. They did, Liam corrected, in the third session of the peace talks. Ambassador, Pierce presented maps with clearly defined territorial boundaries. The Council dismissed them as ambitious but never formally rejected them. Vrex slammed his fist on the table. Send a scout ship to Sigma 7 immediately, and put all border outposts on high alert. As the Council members hurried to react to this new development, no one noticed Liam discreetly accessing a terminal in the corner of the room. With a few quick commands, he downloaded classified files about the Council's original plans for humanity, plans drafted years before first contact had even occurred. The files showed a systematic approach to what the Council euphemistically called controlled integration of humanity. In reality, it was a blueprint for the gradual subjugation of Earth and its colonies. They never intended to treat us as equals, Liam murmured to himself as he copied the files to a secure data crystal. The peace talks were theater from the beginning. At that moment, sensors across Council space detected a strange phenomenon. Dozens of small, unidentified objects appearing briefly at key strategic locations before vanishing again. The Council military dismissed them as sensor ghosts. They weren't. The Aegis protocol had entered its second phase. Lieutenant Karen Mendez guided her scout ship through the debris field that had once been Outpost Sigma 7. 2 weeks after humanity's withdrawal from the Council, the outpost, positioned at the edge of human space, but still within their territorial claim, had gone silent. The UES Falcon was a small, fast vessel designed for reconnaissance. Its hull was painted matte black to reduce visual detection, and its engines had been modified to emit minimal energy signatures. Karen and her crew of 5 had been sent to investigate what had happened to the Council outpost. "This is worse than I expected," she said quietly as she maneuvered around a large piece of twisted metal. Officer Patrick Winters nodded from the sensor station. His fingers moved quickly over the controls as he scanned the wreckage. "Reading. Multiple weapon signatures," he reported. "Definitely Zelgarian disruptor technology, but there's something else. Energy patterns I've never seen before." Karen frowned. The Zelgarians were one of the most militaristic species in the Council. If they had attacked this outpost, it could mean the beginning of a larger conflict. "Was it destroyed in battle? Do you see any signs of return fire?" Patrick studied his readings. "No, that's the strange part. It looks like a one-sided attack. The outpost didn't fight back." Karen's frown deepened. "That doesn't make sense. Even a research outpost would have basic defenses, unless they were disabled first," suggested Communications Officer Rita Lee. She was the youngest member of the crew, just 26, but she had a sharp mind. What if this wasn't just an attack? What if it was a test? Karen looked at her. "A test of what?" "Of us. Of human defenses. Or lack thereof." Rita pointed to a section of the sensor display. "Look at the attack pattern. They hit the communications array first, then power, then life support. Methodical, like they were timing each stage." Karen nodded slowly. "Send everything back to command, and prepare a message buoy for the Council. They need to know their member species is attacking our outposts." "Do you think they'll care?" Patrick asked. Karen's eyes hardened. "Probably not, but we'll follow protocol. We document everything. We report everything, and we make sure the record is clear when things escalate." As the Falcon gathered more data, a small probe detached from its underside and slipped away unnoticed. The probe contained a quantum-entangled communication device, part of the Aegis Protocol's network. Within seconds, all the sensor data the Falcon had collected was being transmitted directly to Earth, bypassing normal communication channels. Across the galaxy, Admiral Frank Coleman stood before the United Earth Defense Council presenting evidence of the attack. The room, carved into the interior of Luna, was humanity's most secure meeting facility. "The Zelgarians claim this was a rogue action," Frank explained, pointing to the holographic display showing the destroyed outpost. "But our intelligence suggests otherwise. We've intercepted communications indicating this was a sanctioned test of our defenses. The 12 members of the Defense Council listened intently. They represented Earth's major regions and colonies, and collectively controlled humanity's military response. Defense Secretary Maria Lopez nodded grimly. And what of the Aegis Protocol, is it ready? Phase 1 implementation is complete, answered Dr. Kevin Hudson, chief scientist of the project. He was a tall man, with thinning gray hair and intense eyes. The quantum entanglement network is operational across all colonies and major fleet elements. If the Council attempts a coordinated strike, we'll be able to respond instantaneously across multiple fronts. And Phase 2? Asked Secretary Lopez. The dimensional pocket technology is functioning as designed. We've successfully deployed 500 stealth platforms throughout Council space. They remain undetected. Admiral Coleman added, the fact that the Zelgarians attacked a Council outpost rather than a human one suggests they're still testing the waters. They want to see how we respond before committing to a direct confrontation. So what is our response? Asked Counselor Peter Jackson from the Mars colony. Measured but firm, Admiral Coleman replied. We increase patrols along our borders. We accelerate the deployment of automated defense platforms. And we leak just enough information to make them think twice about further aggression. And if they don't take the hint? Counselor Jackson pressed. Admiral Coleman's face hardened. Then we activate Phase 3. In another part of the galaxy, Liam Carter, still working within the Council, accessed restricted archives from his private quarters. The official history of humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council painted a picture of benevolent, advanced species welcoming Earth into the galactic community. But buried in classified files, Liam found something disturbing. Detailed plans for the controlled integration of humanity, drafted years before first contact even occurred. The Council had detected Earth's early radio transmissions nearly a century before they officially revealed themselves. They had monitored human development, waiting for the right moment to make contact, not when humans were ready but when they were useful. They never intended to treat us as equals, he murmured, copying the files to a secure data crystal. The peace talks were theater from the beginning. Liam knew he had to get this information back to Earth, but as the only human still working within the Council, he was being watched closely. Direct communication would be detected immediately. He needed another way. His opportunity came 3 days later when the Council called him to a special meeting. Intelligence Director Nix of the Voidborn Collective led the session. Director Carter, we need your expertise, she said, her cloud-like form pulsing with points of light. Our sensors have detected unusual energy readings throughout Council space. Small bursts of quantum activity that appear and then vanish. An image appeared on the main screen showing a map of the readings. Some believe these may be of human origin, she continued. Is there any human technology that could explain this? Liam studied the display carefully. He recognized the pattern immediately. The quantum entanglement network, the backbone of the Aegis Protocol, but he kept his face neutral. Quantum fluctuations can occur naturally, he said, but I'd need to examine the raw data to form any conclusions. We've already ruled out natural phenomena, Nix replied. These readings correspond too closely with strategic locations, communication hubs, defensive installations, trading centers. Liam shrugged. Earth has been experimenting with quantum communication for decades, but nothing that could explain this scale of activity. Perhaps it's a new form of Marixian crystalline technology? Their lattice structures naturally interact with quantum fields. The deflection worked. Nix and the others began discussing alternative explanations, temporarily shifting suspicion away from humanity. As the meeting ended, Liam was approached by Delegate Zora of the Marixian Confederation. You defended my species in there, she said, her crystalline form shimmering in the light. Why? Because I believe in scientific accuracy, Liam replied carefully. Zora studied him with facets that served as eyes. Not all council members supported the approach taken with humanity. Some of us advocated for true partnership. I'm glad to hear it, Liam said. Perhaps there's still hope for peaceful relations. Perhaps, Zora agreed. But I fear events are moving too quickly now. The Zelgarians push for military action daily. Liam nodded, seeing an opportunity. If only there was a way to share perspective to help the Council understand humanity better. What do you mean? Historical context. Cultural understanding. Liam hesitated, then added, I've prepared some materials that might help. Would you be willing to review them? Of course, Zora said. And that was how Liam passed the data crystal, containing evidence of the Council's original plans for humanity, to the one Council member who might actually care. They've crossed the Armstrong line, announced Communications Officer Daniel Wright aboard the UES Defiant. His voice was tense but controlled. The Armstrong line was the formal boundary of the Sol system, named after the first human to walk on Earth's moon. Captain Olivia Reyes nodded calmly from her command chair. At 45, she was one of Earth Fleet's most experienced officers. Her dark hair was cut short for practicality, and her brown eyes missed nothing. How many ships? She asked. 3 Zelgarian dreadnoughts and 6 support vessels. Daniel replied. They're moving slowly, clearly wanting us to see them. It's a show of force, said First Officer Eric Nelson. They want to intimidate us. Captain Reyes studied the tactical display. The Defiant was Earth's newest warship, but it was still smaller than a Zelgarian dreadnought. However, size wasn't everything. Send the predetermined message, she ordered. They have one opportunity to withdraw. Message sent, Captain, Daniel confirmed after a moment. The bridge crew waited in tense silence. The Zelgarian fleet continued, its advance showing no signs of stopping. No response, Captain, Daniel reported. They're continuing on their current course. Olivia touched a small device on her wrist. It wasn't part of her standard uniform. It was a quantum-entangled communicator, linked directly to Earth Command, and to the thousands of hidden platforms that were part of the Aegis Protocol. This is Captain Reyes of the UES Defiant. Zelgarian fleet has crossed the Armstrong line and is not responding to warnings, requesting permission to activate Phase 3. The response came almost instantly. Permission granted, Captain. You may proceed. Olivia looked at her crew. Activate the Aegis Protocol Phase 3. First Officer Nelson entered a series of commands into his console. The ship's lights dimmed briefly as power was diverted to a new system that had been hidden within the Defiant's design. Phase 3 activated, he reported. Dimensional shift in 3, 2, 1. The Zelgarian fleet commander, General Kavik, received the human transmission and laughed. His 6 upper limbs moved in a gesture of dismissal. They think a single defense perimeter around their home system will deter us. The humans have no concept of real warfare. His second in command was more cautious. The message mentioned severe consequences if we don't withdraw. Empty threats, Kavik said confidently. Our intelligence reports confirm that the humans have only a dozen major warships. We have 3 dreadnoughts here alone. What General Kavik didn't know was that the seemingly simple message also contained an activation signal. Throughout human space and in several carefully selected locations within Council territory, quantum-entangled devices simultaneously activated. On Earth, in the heavily shielded command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Joseph Barnes gave a simple order: initiate Aegis demonstration. In an instant, every Zelgarian ship found itself surrounded by small, previously invisible human craft that had been hiding in dimensional pockets, the result of humanity's secret research into the gravitational distortion technology the Council had refused to share. General Kavik stared in shock at his tactical display. Where there had been empty space moments before, now 50 small human ships surrounded his fleet. Impossible, he whispered. Where did they come from? Unknown, General, his sensor officer replied, his voice shaking. They didn't register on any approach vectors. They just appeared. At the same time across Council space, vital military communication relays mysteriously failed. Trading hubs found their automated defense systems temporarily offline, and in the Council chamber itself, every screen and holographic projector began displaying the same message. This is a demonstration. Humanity will defend itself. We possess capabilities you have not witnessed. Withdraw your forces from human space and acknowledge our sovereign boundaries. You have 1 standard hour to comply. In the ensuing panic, only Science Director Liam Carter remained composed, secretly pleased that the plan he had helped design was working perfectly. The Galactic Council's representatives gathered in emergency session, realizing too late that their intelligence on human capabilities had been catastrophically wrong. High Chancellor Vrex turned to Intelligence Director Nix. How did we miss this? How could they have developed dimensional phasing without our knowledge? Because you assumed they would develop technology in the same sequence as most Council species, Liam answered instead. His voice was calm but carried a hint of satisfaction. Humans don't. We leap ahead in areas that interest us, often skipping what others consider developmental prerequisites. You knew about this, accused Ambassador Kelgan of the Zelgarian Dominion. You are a traitor to the Council. My primary loyalty has always been to peaceful coexistence, Liam replied. I made that clear from the beginning. What the humans are demonstrating isn't aggression, it's deterrence. The Council watched in horror as the small human ship surrounding the Zelgarian fleet released a pulse of energy that didn't destroy the invading vessels. It simply shut them down, leaving them drifting in space. General Kavik's dreadnought went dark. Emergency lights kicked in, but all weapons, propulsion, and communication systems were offline. What happened? He demanded, his voice rising in panic. Some kind of electromagnetic pulse, but far more sophisticated than anything we've encountered, his chief engineer reported. It bypassed all our shielding. Can you restore power? Working on it, sir, but our diagnostic systems are also affected. It could take hours. On the bridge of the UES Defiant, Captain Reyes watched as the Zelgarian ships drifted powerless in space. Open a channel to General Kavik, she ordered. Use their emergency frequency. The face of the Zelgarian general appeared on the main view screen. His normally green skin had paled to a sickly yellow. This is Captain Olivia Reyes of the United Earth Fleet, she said formally. Your vessels have been temporarily disabled as a demonstration of our defensive capabilities. Your life support systems remain functional and your crew is in no danger. This is an act of war, Kavik sputtered. No, General. This is an act of mercy. We could have destroyed your fleet. Instead, we chose to demonstrate that your military technology is not as superior as you believed. Olivia's voice hardened. Power will be restored to your vessels in 6 hours. Enough time for the Council to consider its position. I suggest you use that time to reconsider yours. The transmission ended. Olivia turned to her crew, who were watching her with a mixture of awe and relief. Well done, everyone, she said. Maintain position and keep sensors at maximum range. There are other Council ships in nearby systems, and we need to be ready if they decide to intervene. Her first officer approached. Do you think this will be enough to convince them? Olivia sighed. It's never that simple, Eric. We've shown them we're not helpless, but that might just make some of them more determined to stop us before we grow stronger. So what happens next? Now we wait. The Council has to decide whether to continue down this path or to accept that humanity deserves respect, not subjugation. As the disabled Zelgarian ships drifted silently in space, a new message was being relayed across the galaxy through the quantum entanglement network. It contained detailed evidence of the Council's original plans for humanity's controlled integration, the same information Liam had discovered and passed to Delegate Zora. The message went not just to Earth, but to every member species of the Galactic Council. The truth that had been hidden for decades was finally exposed. The game had changed completely. 6 months after humanity's demonstration of power, a different kind of meeting took place aboard the neutral station Harmony. The station had been built specifically for this purpose, positioned at the exact midpoint between human space and Council territory. Ambassador Alan Pierce, now elevated to Director of Interspecies Relations, sat across from High Chancellor Vrex and representatives from the Council's major powers. The circular table was designed so that no species could claim a position of dominance. We appreciate your willingness to restart discussions under these new parameters. Alan said diplomatically. He wore the same simple dark blue suit he had worn during the original peace talks, a deliberate reminder of how things had changed. Rex inclined his massive head. The Council has reevaluated its position on human integration. That was putting it mildly. The revelation of the Council's original plans for the controlled integration of humanity had caused a political earthquake within the galactic community. Several smaller species, long suspicious of the dominant power's motives, had formed their own coalition. The Zelgarian Dominion had lost considerable influence after their failed show of force, and the Arconian Empire, led by Vrex, had barely maintained its leadership position. The new treaty being drafted was unlike any the Council had previously extended to an emerging species. Full voting rights from the outset, mutual technology, exchange protocols, non-interference clauses with severe penalties. The quantum entanglement network, Vrex said, looking at the section of the treaty discussing technology sharing. Your species developed this independently? Yes, Alan confirmed. Along with the dimensional pocket technology, both were originally theoretical projects that received massive funding after we realized the Council's true intentions. And the disabled Zelgarian ships, they suffered no permanent damage? None. As we promised, it was merely a demonstration. Had we wanted to destroy them, we could have. The Marixian delegate Zora spoke next, her crystalline form catching the light. Your restraint was noted and appreciated, Director Pierce. Not all species would have shown such mercy. In a private moment during a recess, Zora approached Science Director Liam Carter, who had been quietly observing the proceedings. Your people never needed our gravitational distortion technology, did they? You already had it. Liam smiled slightly. What we needed was time. Time to prepare, time to build. The peace talks gave us that. But why the withdrawal? Why not simply reveal your capabilities at the negotiation table? Human psychology, Liam explained. We don't respond well to being underestimated or cornered. The Council's approach triggered something deep in our collective psyche, a determination to prove our worth, to demonstrate our strength. And now? What does humanity want moving forward? The same thing we wanted from the beginning. Peaceful coexistence, mutually beneficial trade, cultural exchange, but as equals, not as subjects. On Earth, humanity had united as never before. The Aegis Protocol had evolved from a defensive measure into a framework for human expansion and development. Colonial applications were at an all-time high as people rushed to build new lives on frontier worlds. Captain Olivia Reyes, now promoted to Admiral, stood with Defense Secretary Maria Lopez, watching the construction of a massive station in Earth orbit that would serve as humanity's diplomatic headquarters. Do you think they understand yet? Olivia asked quietly. Maria shook her head. Not fully. The Council species evolved in environments that favored cooperation within strict hierarchies. They can't quite grasp that we evolved as adaptable problem solvers, who thrive when challenged. Will the peace last? It's not peace we've achieved, Maria corrected. It's respect. And respect, unlike peace, requires continuous demonstration. As if to emphasize her point, a fleet of next-generation human ships emerged from Earth's orbital shipyards, heading out to patrol the new boundaries of human space. Boundaries the Galactic Council would never again mistake for weakness. Back on Station Harmony, the final negotiation session was drawing to a close. The treaty had been revised, amended, and finally approved by all parties. Ambassador Alan Pierce signed the final document with a pen, an archaic human custom he had insisted upon. The Treaty of Harmony, he pronounced, a new beginning. Kaiko. Chancellor Vrex used his species' traditional method, pressing his scaled palm into a special clay tablet that would harden into stone, preserving his unique pattern forever. A new beginning, he agreed, though there was uncertainty in his yellow eyes. After the ceremony, Alan met with Admiral Greg Hoffman, who had commanded the human fleet during their withdrawal from the Council. Think they'll honor it? Greg asked, nodding toward the signed treaty. Some will, some won't, Alan replied, but that's true of any agreement between different cultures. And if they don't? Then the Aegis protocol remains active. Alan looked out the viewport at the stars. We've established quantum communication relays in every system of strategic importance. We've positioned dimensional pocket platforms near every major council world. We've created a deterrent that even the most aggressive species must respect. Not exactly the peaceful first contact we dreamed of as children, Greg said with a hint of sadness. No, but perhaps it's the first contact we needed. Alan turned back to his old friend. How does that ancient saying go? If you want peace, prepare for war? Greg nodded. Something like that. Well, we've proven we're prepared. Now let's show them we truly want peace. As Station Harmony rotated, slowly in space, diplomatic vessels from both humanity and the Council departed for their respective territories. The journey home would be longer for the Council representatives. Their central worlds were much farther away than Earth. Science Director Liam Carter, now officially recognized as humanity's permanent ambassador to the Council, watched them go with mixed feelings. He had played a dangerous game, walking the line between his duties to the Council and his loyalty to his species. The revelation of the Council's original plans could have easily been traced back to him. But Delegate Zora had protected his role in exposing the truth. Perhaps she had seen what he had, that both humanity and the Council needed this reset to build something better. A junior diplomat approached Liam with a data tablet. The first cultural exchange delegations are ready for approval, Ambassador. Liam smiled. This was the part he had been waiting for, the true beginning of cooperation. Scientific teams, artists, philosophers from dozens of species preparing to visit Earth, while human representatives would travel to Council worlds. Approve them all, he said. It's time we started learning from each other rather than fearing each other. What remained unsaid was the truth every human knew. Sometimes you have to walk away from the table to change the game entirely, and humanity had changed the game forever.